your advice to
but
someone like, I'm about to put up a social media post, Sam? What should I do?
I'm a big fan of thinking carefully, before you say something or put something out into the world. But also, um, sometimes that's not always going to be, that's not always how things are going to work out. I think just taking a considered approach, thinking carefully about what you're trying to do, what is like most likely to get you what you want, but also knowing that there are some times when, there isn't an easy answer.
Welcome. Here we are again. I'm Dr. Sandra Dreisbach, and with me is Dr. Sam Douglas, doing another epic, inspire conversation with you. And today we're going to talk about what is the role, or what do we see the role in terms of social media and psychedelic ethics? What have we been seeing? How do we see it being discussed? And is it good? Does it help us? Does it harm us? What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, okay, so not a complex question or anything.
I mean,
Something
I can always start first. I don't mean to always
there's a
make you
simple
putting you in
answer
the
to
driver's
that.
seat.
What do I think? What do I think? I don't know.
What
No,
do you
I
think?
think
What
it's
do I
it's
think?
interesting. I think it's interesting at the moment because there has been. I feel like there's been a real shift in how uh, ethics and ethical concerns are being discussed in social media with psychedelics. I think there was at one point there was more um, there was more criticism, and there was not necessarily always in the most constructive ways, and we can get to that.
You mean criticism that psychedelics wasn't ethical?
Or that certain things, not that psychedelics, inherently were unethical, but that things that there's more criticism around what people perceived as being unethical, in and around psychedelics or practices, or there was more of that. Um, I personally think there is less of that in some ways at the moment. It's less prominent in social media. I think what's happening now is, um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that there's a lot of. I don't feel like there's a lot of discussion of ethics around it. Maybe this is just maybe I just have my cranky pants on today
No,
because I
it's okay,
feel
baby. You know the cranky, but it's like, but I think you're. I mean, even as you're talking about it, like you're making me think about the fact that at first glance, like psychedelic ethics and social media is like, are psychedelics ethical, or are you just getting high, or like, and that it comes in as a critique from the outside about psychedelics in general, whether or not we're talking about psychedelic therapy or for therapeutic purposes or spiritual purposes. Regardless of the purpose, it doesn't matter. As soon as you say the word psychedelic, right, then there's a sort of global northwestern mindset towards it because of war on drugs and other sort of things. But I think there's less of that, right? And then there was a shift on talking about, uh, when there's more exposure to survivors and harm happening in the space, and more celebrities coming out about their experiences, or veterans or others who are sharing their positive experience, or the Michael Pollan book or other things, like where it seems to be, then it was like a conversation like, are we hyping it up too much? So is it being seen as too good to be true? Are they overhyping the positive aspects? And then the reverse of like, are we are we not giving people enough conversation around the potential harms and the risks of it in a grounded way, and not paying attention to harms to, like, survivors and other people who have been affected, right? So like that sort of the sort of the natural sort of extremism, for lack of better words, like there's not a moderate, sort of, it's more of that, what gets the sort of tabloid attention, in terms of psychedelics and psychedelic therapies and healing, and like, is this going to cause harm to the movement type of conversations, in media.
yeah.
But
Look, I think the pendulum has swung a particular direction. I think it's there's really, um, in terms of what I see on social media, and it varies depending on channel, but I follow a lot of people, both sort of just average community sort of folk who are interested in or use psychedelics up to really high profile organizations and individuals, and it's really, the discussion is very like there's a real interest in particular discussion occurring, and it tends to be more positive, and there's less of a, depending on where you're saying things, there's less of a tolerance in people to hear anything that's negative or complex, or just asking questions. Even though it's if you ask, I mean, if I'm asking questions about whether or not I think something is a good thing, I'm not doing it for the glorious riches that you get
Yes.
from
Yes, let's say if
from being a
anyone is in the
psychedelic
idea
nacer.
that we get glorious riches from doing
Oh yeah,
psychedelic
yeah.
ethics work, at this point in time, that is not the case.
That is not the
If
case. I
anything,
can
you're
verify the
more
lack
prone
of
to
glory and
critique. You're more
yeah.
prone, like, is like, or are we trying to be perfect, or like, like, no, no. But I think one of the things that you're making me think of is, I know we both appreciate psychedelic humor, and and how I think actually the main way I see psychedelic ethics addressed that actually starts pushing the needle a little bit is in humor, in psychedelic humor that deals with ethics topics. Um, no, granted, it's more of like, like sort of making tongue in cheek on like psychedelic wokeness of like, alleged shamans. I'm thinking of like, oh, what was that one? There was like this meme that was really popular. That was like, it was like the psychedelic shaman kit, right? And it was like, dress up for Halloween, right? And it had like the sort of like, or like the tech bro, shaman bro, or babe, whatever,
Well, I mean,
posturing.
yeah, you can have that. I mean, these days wouldn't it be the I mean, surely people are dressed up as a microdosing coach for
That's
Halloween.
right, microdosing coach, microdosing
Yeah,
facilitator.
yeah,
Yes.
really with a great
Um,
hat. You need a hat. Isn't that
you
the
need a
essential part of
hat.
being a microdosing coach? Great hat. Um, uh, yeah. Well, yeah. Like there is. Look, I agree. I think humor is one way where it has become more accessible to address it. But even then, and I feel a little. Look, this is a thing. I think about this a lot because I think, in terms of like not just humor, but like it's not just humor. It's satire.
It's satire.
It's satire.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's that thing of using humor uh, to sort of expose something or speak truth to power or those sort of things. But I think that's it's still kind of compartmentalized. So
Right.
that sometimes it's still kind of safe and sanitized. So like I feel bad because this is there's not many people doing this, so it's kind of hard for it not to kind of feel like it's directed at specific people. You can do sort of safe psychedelic humor, but it's in a way that it's like, oh, isn't it funny that people take psychedelics and think they're better than everyone, but which is
Right.
funny, and it is a thing and it is important, but
Or making a joke of appropriation, like, like, well, the reason why that's that little shaman bro, costume is entertaining is because people are really appropriating things and causing, harm. Not that we're going to go into the whole decolonization conversation right now, because that's a bigger topic, but uh, I think you're right that if even though humor brings up a lot of these topics and people speaking to power and things like that, the engagement is limited.
it's done as I think some of it, for my taste, is probably a little. It just ends up being a little bit safe, or it ends up being
Yeah.
contained in a way that avoids bigger questions. And I think there are certain things, certain brands of psychedelic humor that are acceptable to enough, uh, you know, punters out there, and it's like the things when you see like the Healing from Healing account, where they just find the weirdest, sort of cooked, takes on something
And I'm a fan.
in
I will honestly say I'm
psychedelic takes.
biased
Oh
on
yeah,
that one.
totally,
Yeah.
totally a fan of Healing from Healing, but it also like Healing from Healing is great, but it also allows people to just go, oh wow, look at those people who think that this isn't real, or look at those people who are going on about being star seeds or whatever, and it's funny, and you get to conveniently get to have a laugh and other them, and then just kind of go on with your day without thinking too hard about um, actual kind of
Like what
deep
do you do
ethical
actually do to
issues.
make the space better? What do you do to
Yeah, yeah,
actually like how do we like take these sort of critiques that are encapsulated in humorous moments, which we do need, right? Like it but and it does help discussion and it does point humor at things. But then take the other things. So since we're talking about social media in general, right? And humor is like I'm making the argument that that's where I see more points about it. But I am seeing like more commentaries, like on LinkedIn in particular, I would say, where where I'm seeing people actually pointing out challenging issues. Now they're putting forth their particular perspective and then sharing an article or exposing a person or a community or an organization or or leveraging their own brand, let's be honest,
Mm.
that ethics becomes a way to position yourself as being knowledgeable in the space and an authority in the space. And I guess that means us included, right?
Oh, yeah. Look, I guess it does, but also, by the same token, we both know, as we've discussed previously, obliquely at least, the number of people who just declare themselves an expert in ethics because they did a fucking computer science degree, and then you know go ahead and do something with it, because there's no expertise in ethics. Anyone can be expert in ethics. Yeah, look, I think there is that, but it's interesting because there, in terms of the numbers of people and in terms of what gets really sort of traction, people like good news stories. Some of the biggest accounts around psychedelics aren't the ones that ask difficult questions.
That's
Um,
true. Yeah.
the biggest accounts, the biggest social media accounts, even in places like LinkedIn, where you would think there would be more serious discussion, but it is only a particular kind of serious discussion. Um,
Right.
but,
Limited, a few different comments back and forth, and
yeah, but
then it dies.
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is inherently, if we're going to be like that, and just say LinkedIn is inherently capitalist, and that most of the big accounts there stay within that frame, but people like making money, and people like good news stories. You sort of line those two things up. The overlap of the middle bit of that Venn diagram, that is where the bulk of social media discussion of psychedelics is. Can someone make money from it? Is it a good news story that makes me feel good? Um, where that overlaps is social media gold, and that's what people is easy for people to hear, and they like. Which that's my theory, at least, anyway. It's
Yeah,
because
and not to make a comment about like,
yeah,
just, I mean, like we both use LinkedIn. We both obviously this is going to be on like YouTube and other things and stuff. And and it's not for the lack of appreciation for all these different
oh yeah,
platforms
yeah, yeah,
and
totally.
the need for social dialogue and engagement on this. And if we're getting any engagement around psychedelic ethics, I'm grateful. I'm not as grateful about the cancel culture. I don't think that's productive, and I think that's sometimes what I see also happening on social media, independent from like the main posts. Sometimes they're like, I don't know, maybe we see this more in the sort of more political edge around psychedelics, right? Where we're seeing more positions being put forward and people feel like there's more at stake, right? Like
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. And I think the notion of, I mean, it used to be that people were sort of you know used to be worried about being cancelled by people with a more left wing perspective. Not to
right.
name names, but everyone knows who we're talking about. Uh, and that used to be a thing. But now I think the opposite is true. You can be sort of very easily, um, quietly or not so quietly, cancelled for again, having the temerity to express opinions that maybe making vast amounts of money off psychedelics isn't the most important thing, and we should occasionally sort of think about stuff and
Yeah.
not. Um, not do certain things or only do certain things slowly. So I think there is the carving out of positions. The stakes are higher, and when the stakes are higher, then whether it's political or whether it's just because of hundreds of millions or billions of dollars invested, then yeah, this the consequences of not towing a certain line become greater. And there are people who are have particular viewpoints, but who are critics of practices in psychedelics, but who are really diligent. And again, not naming names, but some of these people, you just have to, I watch it on some social media channels, and it's particularly on Blue Sky, because you get notified when someone puts you on a block list on Blue Sky. And I will always notice when I will share, there's a particular person, I'll share something that they've done, and inevitably that will lead to me being blocked, just because I shared something of theirs. There'll be someone who goes, "All right,
you're not friendly to me. Yeah, you got canceled.
we can't be, we can't be."
And I know
It's
you're
like,
going to know about it because that's how this platform works. Well,
yes, that's right.
and that brings up, so like, making some positive arguments and making some challenging arguments around social media. Obviously, social media is not going anywhere. But how do we have a better, more balanced approach, or what would be the sort of psychedelic ethics approach to working with social media that isn't just about, let's say, making you look good, right? Like, it's not just about like, oh, okay, look at me, I'm being ethical in psychedelics, I'm a responsible practitioner, by my coaching program or my facilitation, or come with me to Peru, right? Type of thing, right? Right. Or the extreme cancel, right, where we're just, lambasting people. That's not productive either. Like, you know, I think a balanced, more informed approach, being willing to educate people and inform people. I realize not everyone's an educator, but I think sometimes people put themselves in the position of being an expert, like you were saying earlier about like, well, everyone's an ethics expert now, right? And I'm not saying that there's like it's a privileged position by us PhD people. And I know we get criticized like, oh, they think they're better than us. Like, no, no, we just happen to have different training and education and specialization. That's different, and we come with that mindset, and we're hoping to serve and be of service in that way, right? To help inform and educate in that way. Whereas like someone who may be a facilitator is bringing that to the space. And I think we need to respect each other's, experience. Let's even just its experience. You don't have to see it as having like more or less say. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts? What would be your advice to
look,
someone like, I'm about to put up a social media post, Sam? What should I do?
she do. Look, I don't know. Maybe I'm the wrong person to ask about that. I think
Okay, I'm
it's
about to put up a new shirt that makes a satirical comment about psychedelic
comment.
ethics.
Wait,
Sam's shirt will
I've
be linked below.
linked below. I will sell.
Or at least it's Etsy
Maybe I'll
store. I
sell
don't
more
know.
than one shirt. Um, no, look, it's. I think it is. I'm a big fan of thinking carefully. Before you say something or put something out into the world, but also, um, sometimes that's not always going to be. That's not always how things are going to work out. I think just taking a considered approach, thinking carefully about what you're trying to do, what is like most likely to get you what you want, but also knowing that there are some times when, like, there isn't an easy answer. Sometimes you can
Right.
kind of it's sometimes the right thing to do, or sometimes the stakes are such that compromise, even though it's not perfect, that will get you more of what you want than otherwise, so you do that. But then there's other times where compromise just morally isn't an option. Um, so you do you take a less compromising line on things. You do say you do take a harder line. You do say this isn't a thing that's debatable. This isn't a thing where we should meet in the middle. This isn't a thing where we should get together and talk about it with someone. And
We
it's
need
just
to
trying
take
to
a
find
hard
it.
line on it. We need to take a stand. Like let's take
Yeah,
consent. Okay, I
yeah,
don't think I don't think consent is one of those issues that we should be wishy-washy about, regardless of whether you're talking about psychedelic ethics or outside of it, and regardless of what culture you come from, or what mindset. I think there's a general orientation that we should respect individuals and communities and cultures, and we should get consent for whether we're talking about their practices or working on someone or giving them a substance or, that's something we shouldn't really compromise on,
Yeah,
right?
totally. And I think this is one of the things where um, one of the things that is an interesting thing to do ethically is to think about is start with sometimes what helps is to start with what do you feel is unjustifiable under any circumstance. What is beyond the pale, in that sort of really just some things that are just wrong and there is no discussing it. And consent is one of the areas where that is like that you can sketch out areas where that's very clearly true and where a lot of people will agree, and most people will agree, and then you can kind of it's thinking about these sort of things is where you can kind of get a sense on whether or not there is going to be a possibility of any useful discussion. Sometimes, depending on what you're talking about and depending on who you're talking about it with.
I do like that.
And
I mean, I like that as finding a basis for, like, if something is important for you, I would definitely encourage people to not be afraid to say what's important to you, to say authentically what is of value to you. And from what your experience or your practice, it doesn't mean you're coming from a judgmental or critical or that you're not open to different practices or perspectives. It's saying, in my experience, this is what works, but also like having don't just always make it, rose-colored glasses towards everything, and also don't do the opposite. Don't make it all like, it's all doom and gloom either. That sort of,
yeah,
say what you think authentically and honestly, and just state the truth.
yeah. Well, look, it's the truth as you see it, and
Yeah, right. I
I
mean,
think
I'm not saying that there's one truth, by the way. So I should be careful as we try and wrap this up.
let's not start another rabbit hole
I
this
know, I
late
know, I know,
in the
I know. We're
discussion.
gonna like, as trained philosophers, we know which were rabbit holes. Like, wait, we gotta sidestep that one. We can't go into a whole truth discussion. But I appreciate that we had this conversation. I know we're trying to make these a little bit shorter for this, so you get more snippets on different things. But I appreciate being able to talk about the role of social media and psychedelic ethics. So I guess my main parting remark is just, yes, it makes a difference. It does help engagement, but it can also cause people to have uh, to remove themselves from engagement if they don't tackle it honestly when it's important to.
Yes, definitely.
Any final thoughts before we stop? Well, that's it. We've had the final word. But I mean, it's challenging. I will say, like, as an actual ethicist, there's never a one and done answer for any situation, including psychedelic ethics or any particular part of the field. And it's okay not to know, and it's okay not to comment, and it's okay to stand up for what you believe too. But consider how, try and do it from a grounded place, and think about, you know, what kind of what are you actually encouraging yourself and others to practice, right? Are you
Yeah,
walking the walk? Like, are you trying to encourage people to just give quick social media clickbait, or are you encouraging people to actually do real change that creates positive psychedelic experiences and helps healing and mental health?
yeah. I think that's right. It's just if people can just think about what they're doing in more terms than just engagement, then yeah, that's a good thing.
Well, we'll take that. It's a good thing. You've heard it officially. Sam said it's a good thing. We're gonna like just plaster that around and abuse it relentlessly because he said it's a good thing, right?
Until I get cancelled.
Until we get canceled. Yeah. So until we get canceled, till next again. Thanks for joining us for this little conversation around social media and psychedelic ethics. If you have ideas or suggestions or comments, open to feedback. We're kind of evolving as we go, and we're just grateful to be able to share some of our thoughts and reflections with you. Much love.